Okay, hello kids. So I'm happy you're here watching this, and I want to talk to you guys today about feelings and friendships and the feelings you have when you're not in friendships that you're meant to be in. And the fact that a lot of those times the feeling comes without evidence. The evidence is the feeling. But sometimes you are lucky enough to receive a wide open, plain as day example, moment in an interaction with that friend in some type of scenario that shows you exactly why you've been feeling a certain kind of way, probably since the very beginning. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I was like as a friend and as a person growing up. I moved around a lot. Your mom was born in Canada, and had a brief childhood in like this St. Lawrence area, very, very cute area near St. Lawrence Market. Hopefully, I've taken you there. Um, and then she moved to Oshawa, where she had a few years of schooling in elementary school and made great friends there. Had a little friend group. Um, and then her parents got divorced, grandma and grandpa got divorced, and she moved to Seattle. So there's been a lot of moving around, and in each place that I've lived, I've created very strong, solid friendships, and I've had to leave those friendships behind. And specifically, the friendships in Canada that I made during my early life, my early adolescence, those friendships I did not get to hold on to at all, besides one friend who I got to remain connected to because there was a extended family connection. Um, but beyond that, I didn't get to remain in contact with any of those friends I made. The first friends that I got to keep and stay in contact with were my friends from Seattle, and that is due to social media. I think the advent of social media allowed for those friendships to remain. But yeah, when I moved to Seattle, I made really great friends there because I lived there in elementary school, middle school, and the first year of high school. And then your aunt, Ayanda, decided to be incredible and get into film school in New York. And so we packed up and we all moved to New York with her because grandma couldn't let her go alone. And I was very upset about this at the time, and I felt completely jilted and I was so jaded. But honestly, it was the best thing that could have ever happened. And thank God we went with her because, like, hello, New York. But I was being like a pissy little 15-year-old and I didn't get it. I was just upset. Um, so yeah, left behind those friends, didn't really have a sense of how to say goodbye to people. Growing up, all the moving around, leaving my family and my father in Canada and having this kind of estranged relationship for a decade, I didn't know how to say goodbye. I was not good at goodbyes, and I was not good. It was like when I was there and I was in the moment and present in relationships, great. But when I was gone, it was like, peace out, see you never, and who knows if I'll stay in contact. That was my thing, and it was not something I'm proud of, but it was my behavior. Moved to New York, went to high school in New York, developed friendships there, and when I graduated and moved to Toronto, it was the same behavior. So I had had years of this kind of ongoing way of being, of making friends in a place, moving eventually due to some reason, and kind of leaving those friends behind, even if I didn't need to because I had social media and I was living in a modern world where I could communicate with people. I was stunted in that ability to properly communicate and maintain relationships. And honestly, I just didn't do it. I couldn't do it. And it's not like I didn't want to because I loved all the friends that I made. It was just something in me that was just like, well, it's time to move on. So then I got to Toronto, and I'm 18 now. I'm starting university, and it's during the second semester of my first year in university when I'm living in housing on campus, that I make friends with this friend group that ends up being a very significant relationship in my life and a huge turning point in shadow work, in making me approach who I am and how I exist in relationships and friendships, what I allow to just happen in my life, the passiveness of my behavior when it comes to my friendships, and the way that I ignore the way I feel, because I do not think my feelings reflect truth. I just think that they reflect my feelings. Yeah, so I meet these girls and they're great. And it's so exciting to make new friends, and we're all black. We're all black women, and that is significant because it's always really special to be able to have that kind of bond and be able to share a connection with people and also share a background in that way. And so it's significant for me, and it's meaningful to me. I develop a friendship with these girls, and from the beginning of that friendship, I have a feeling that it's not really meant to be, but that feeling has no ground. There's nothing I can place that in. It's just a feeling I have. It's a slight sense of discomfort. It's a feeling that I am performing and putting on in one way or another, that I'm not being completely honest. And there is an aspect to it of feeling judged and feeling a little bit out of place. So these are feelings I have pretty much the moment these friendships begin. And I can't point out to you any specific thing that these girls have done to make me feel this way. And these people are great people. There's nothing wrong with these people. Everybody's human and everybody has their quirks. And I can't imagine all the things I've done that people could pin on me. So it's not about these women. It's about me, and it's about the way I feel, and it's about the fact that I don't listen to my feelings. So I have this feeling, and I have had these feelings multiple times in different friendships. And like I said, it has never really mattered to me because for one, I think the fact that I have always moved around and left friendships behind has made me feel like it doesn't really matter so much whether something is working or not, or whether we click all the way. Because one, it's been rare to find a friend that I click with all the way. I can think of 2 people. And it has never really mattered because at the end of the day, my friendships usually come to an end because something takes me out of them. And I'm always kind of prepared for that. I always kind of have a bag packed in my mind that allows me to move on very quickly and keeps me pretty detached. And that detachment, I think, results in me passively entering into these deep bonds with people and not having any sense of accountability for my role in building an intimate relationship with someone when I'm not completely present in it, and I'm not even sure if I completely want to be there. So that's kind of just underlying this entire relationship, but like I said, I'm ignoring it because I'm in a phase where I'm not listening to myself that way, and I have not taken a magnifying glass to my behavior in friendships at all. I am aware that I'm a bad communicator, and I tell people that, and it's something I usually tell people at first when I meet new friends, because by that point I've recognized that about myself. But beyond that, it just is what it is. And when I find myself feeling uncomfortable, I just figure it's just because, that's just me. This friend group ends up becoming a huge part of my social life and really ends up dominating my social life. They are the people that I hang out with the most. They are people that I end up going on a vacation with. I end up living with. This friend group ends up being a huge part of my life. And the entire time, this gut feeling that I don't belong, that I am uncomfortable, that I feel judged, that there's something off, that we're not exactly right, exists the entire time. But I have many other things that I can pin it on, whether that's insecurity or avoidance, and me just thinking that I take longer to become vulnerable with somebody, but really, I just need to work harder to develop more trust. There's all these other reasons why I've told myself why I'm feeling this way. And I don't really give much space to consider that I just feel this way because it's true. And it's interesting because I would learn later, and I think something that you guys might end up being told, and I hope I've never told you this because it's something I really don't believe, but something I've been told and something that is often said in this world is that, your feelings aren't facts. And yeah, trust your gut and trust the way you feel, but sometimes you just feel things because you just feel them. And you can't always listen to your feelings. You've got to listen to the logic. You've got to look at what's really going on. And that is very true when it comes to certain things. But when it comes to relationships, I have never had a feeling about somebody or about my connection, my relation to somebody that didn't end up being relevant and true in one way or another. And every relationship that I have felt that I probably shouldn't be in, I was right about. And those have usually come to an end. And if they haven't come to an end, it's just because I'm being passive and not doing anything about it. But I've always been right about my feelings. And I've usually started out with those feelings and have not been able to explain them. And so, like I said, I had this friend group, and it was a big friend group. It was a lot of people, and it grew to involve these boys, and that was complicated because men just make things more complicated, especially in the lives of women and women's groups. And I was aware of that, and I knew that the dynamic of men being added into this situation was going to complicate things and was going to highlight things that were maybe lying under the surface in terms of the way I felt about my experience in my relationship and interactions with the people in my friend group. I knew it would cause trouble. I knew it would shake the table. And to be honest, I didn't really want them to be a part of I didn't want them to join the friend group, but I wasn't gonna do anything about it. I wasn't gonna say anything, but I knew in my gut that it was going to disturb things. The thing that I wasn't being honest about was that things were already disturbed because I was already not being honest, and I was already avoiding my own feelings. It's just that I probably was aware of the fact that these men would come and take the veil off, and they certainly did. And I'm gonna tell you guys about this one night. So it's Halloween, and we all the girls decide to dress up as like these guys. Not as the guys in our friend group, but just as these guys, these cool guys. So everybody dresses up, I dress up, I'm wearing this like bear shirt or something like that. Maybe it's a bear, maybe it's a wolf, I can't remember. It's a bear shirt, I'm wearing like a little do-rag and my baggy jeans, and I'm having a blast because I love to play characters. I love to be expressive and in that way, and I like to be funny. I love having fun. So we all go over to the guys' place. Yeah, we all go over to these guys' place, our friends' place, and we're spending Halloween this way. I think this is how we choose to celebrate Halloween this time. All the girls have dressed up, so it's really fun. We've taken pictures, and like we're all like being like, swag and trying to be like a character, some caricature of a guy, and it's very fun. And then we're all sitting in a circle, deciding, and we start to play this game where we're giving each other like what our guy names would be. And I don't think I suggested any names for anyone. I'm always in some type of side thing that's happening when I'm in a social interaction. So it's rare that I'm ever like in the group, like talking to the group. Sometimes I'm usually talking to whoever's beside me, or there's something else going on. So I wasn't fully in whatever we were doing, and there was always multiple things happening at once because it's a big group and a lot of different relationships and different levels of closeness and different interests. And I remember though, it gets to me and this girl who I had introduced to the friend group and brought into this friend group, she gives me a name that everybody reacts to. She gives me a name that everybody reacts to, and specifically this one guy is like, "You're really gonna let her call you that?" And the name is loaded, and I can't even remember the name. But I remember the feeling that I had as soon as she said it, and so this is where the layers come in, right? Because the name is a name that is, it's a name that could be used stereotypically to describe a certain kind of Black man, and it would be used in a way that would be making fun of them, but it's a real name that many people have. It's a name that many Black men have, but the connotation, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain the nuances of this situation well enough, but the connotation due to maybe media and just maybe like things that you would only understand if you're Black, and if you have an awareness of like Black American culture, Western culture, depictions, different ideas of different stereotypes and caricatures of Black men, and ones that can be derogatory. There was an attachment to the name that was basically like calling somebody ugly. It was like calling somebody ugly, or it was like calling somebody like the stupid like jester friend who's ugly and it wouldn't get the girl, and is funny and but like is a fool and like is the butt of the joke. That is the loaded nuance of that name that has nothing really to do with the actual name, but because of the psyche of Black American culture and the certain things that we have depicted and we have depicted about us and things that we've attached and whatever names have been chosen to be seen as ghetto and have all these things that are loaded onto them. It's complicated, and if I could tell you the name, it would probably make it easier to understand, but I'm just explaining to you that there's a very nuanced and loaded backdrop to this name being chosen for me. I'm not fully aware of how much this friend understood all of that, and I don't think that she had any malice intention. But from the reaction of everybody in the room, and I do mean everybody, it's very obvious. It was very obvious that it's not a super complimentary term. It wasn't like a fun name that you'd want to receive. It wasn't the name that anybody else would have wanted to receive. It was funny, but it was funny in a way where everybody else could laugh, and I should have some type of reaction. I can't have a reaction that's angry because then that would ruin the night, but I shouldn't be like laughing and happy about it unless I am just the dancing fool. So it's very loaded, and the fact that this is happening within a Black friend group is really complicated. Though even all of that is hard because these are Black people who are both Western and also from the continent. And that backdrop also makes things really complicated. Anyways, this example is the one I want to tell you guys about because it was such a shining example of what I had been feeling within my gut this entire time from before I even knew this girl, because it included the rest of the friend group who all laughed and all reacted and all were like, oh, like, ooh, you know, wouldn't want that to be me. So happy that's not me. Um, it explained why I felt this way the entire time, and something I could never have put into words and could have never pointed to a moment and been like, oh, well, this is a perfect example. This was a perfect example of it. And it's still such a complicated experience that I really have struggle explaining. And it's so funny that I don't remember the name, but it shows that it's not about the name. It's about all of the things that lie behind it that were really being said when this name was presented, and gave me a sense of what people thought about me and how people saw me, whether they were completely aware of that or not. And it was a really hard moment. I laughed and was like, you know, no, that wouldn't be my name, blah, blah, blah. What do you mean? And the girl was immediately feeling very like, oh gosh, I didn't mean it, you know, because I think she understood that something had just been opened up there, and this guy was being such an instigator and making it even more extreme and intense. And it was a really hard moment to sit through. And after that moment, I kind of was never the same within this friend group because I didn't feel completely safe. And this is when I start to forget the order of things, the order of events. But I think it was after this moment that more moments began to stand out in my mind, whether they had happened before or after, I can't remember. But more things became prominent in my mind as to why this didn't make any sense. This was not a relationship that made sense for me to be in. Another example is when these guys were first being introduced to the friend group. We were invited to a party, I guess, at one of the guys' house. And when we got there, or maybe it wasn't even his house, maybe it was another person's house, but he was there and so was one of his other friends. And maybe all three of them were there, I don't remember. But we were there at his place, or at somebody's place, and he was there. And I was there with all of my friends, all of my girls, and we were being introduced to this guy who would eventually become part of the friend group, and talking to him. And he spoke to all of the girls except for me. Didn't speak to me, not once. I don't even know if he looked at me. But I just remember being like invisible, but then obviously not invisible. So hyper visible to the point where you're ignored. Your presence is ignored. And there was no reason for it. I have no history with this person. I don't know them. But this is just the way that I'm being treated in this moment. And I'm not sure if any of my friends are noticing. I don't know if they noticed. I never really brought it up. I don't think. Maybe I brought it up once when I was starting to become more bold about the fact that I didn't want to hang out with the group anymore. And maybe I just wanted to hang out with people in smaller little settings, but I didn't want to go to group events anymore. I remember that moment where I started to have that conversation with some of the girls. But yeah, I remember being at that party and that guy speaking to literally all of the girls except for me, and just completely pushing me off to the corner. And I am not someone who breaks down and like withers away and cries because somebody isn't talking to me. I can bounce back very quickly from any type of social isolation or some type of social bullying that's happening. I'm very good at social situations. So I wasn't letting it affect me. But the isolation I felt was very palatable and palpable, and I couldn't ignore it. And it was something that also was embedded into my mind as a blaring red flag sign not just from the guy, obviously, but from my friends either not noticing or not caring. I also left the party early that evening to go home, and like I didn't really have any of my friends check on me or seem to care that I was leaving. Another red flag. Then I went on a trip with these people to Niagara. And during that trip was really complicated because I had a birthday over that trip, and they planned a surprise birthday party for me. Really, one of my friends, who I was closest to, planned a surprise birthday party for me, and I've never had that happen before. And it was very emotional, and I was crying, and I was shocked, and I was so happy, and it was so complicated because on that trip, I also felt incredibly alone. I felt incredibly socially isolated and like I didn't belong and like I had no place. I felt alone and completely ignored by that friend that I was also closest to, and then by everybody else. And I just felt really uncomfortable and like I was not meant to be there. I was not the right person for this friend group. I didn't fit, and I felt awkward and lonely, and like I just wanted it to be over. And I remember several times, but I remember this one moment, like we were all walking towards one place in Niagara, kind of like the downtown area, the place where everybody is. And I had like no one to walk with because everybody was like paired up or in these like triples. And I'm not someone that just like waits for like someone to help me. I go when I find connection, but it felt like there was no room to connect with anybody, that my presence was, and every time I could find a space and find relief getting to finally talk to people or connect, it ended really quickly, or it was awkward, or it was weird. And it was such an obvious sign of, oh, you don't connect with these people. And when you are in a space where like connection is really important and being able to have an intimate bond with somebody is really important, all of whatever social skills you have and whatever you're able to do to push things aside when you're off in real life, it's all of that reveals itself to be a sham. And I think friend like group vacations are notorious for revealing this kind of information about you and your relationship with other people and you and your relationship with yourself and your own feelings. But that trip was so painful, both because of how loved I felt in the moment of the birthday celebration and how bittersweet it was because it felt like it came too late, because everything that led up to that, and I think that happened on like the last day, just had completely torn apart my sense of belonging within this group and had kind of killed my spirit to even feel like there was anything left to try and pretend about. So there were a lot of moments. Oh, and then during the pandemic, this friend group was also continuing to grow and develop, and the pandemic and the isolation of the pandemic, and I had moved back home, and so trying to talk to people on Zoom or Zoom calls, I always felt so awkward, and I was just realizing how much of a mess I had gotten myself into because of my passiveness, and how much I was realizing that I did not connect with the people that I felt were closest to me in my social life. And it was really troubling, and it was disturbing, and it was causing me a lot of grief and a lot of stress. Not they were causing me stress, but I was causing myself stress, just realizing how much I was not being honest with myself. And so finally, I think, I don't know, there's so many more things that happen. There's so many more things that happen, but they're not things that need to be shared because it doesn't have everything to do with me. Um, but finally, I get to this point, and this is after I begin to have some type of spiritual awakening. I don't know. There's no other way to describe it, and I don't like to describe it all the time. I hesitate to describe it as a spiritual awakening because it feels so trivial to say it that way, because of the way like spiritual awakenings are like so, but I don't know what else to call it. But it was very real. It was very real, and it was painful, and it was scary because it was kind of tearing my life apart. And that summer of 2021, I think, is the summer that I decided to end that friendship. The context is that I'm coming off of a breakup that happens in February, where I also realize some painful things about that breakup, which doesn't need to be discussed, but I was going through it. And so I was becoming aware of how dangerous my own passivity is, the fact that it gets me into relationships that I don't want to be in. And in this relationship that I had just gotten out of, I got into that relationship very passively, or actually not very passively, very actively, actively going against what I felt because I just wanted to be in a relationship. And that behavior had consequences that would affect the rest of my life, and were scarring. And so I was dealing with that reality and my own responsibility and accountability within that situation. And then I was having this random, out of nowhere spiritual awakening. I feel like I was being cracked open. And that summer, I go to visit grandma, in Tulum for the very first time. And while I'm there, I'm having a whole journey. I don't even tell my job that I'm leaving. I'm just thinking I can work remotely from there, and that's the whole thing. And while I'm there, half of the friend group has already fallen apart. The boys have already left the friend group, and I'm having all these realizations about my behavior towards one of those men, and needing to apologize because I had acted really rashly and learned information later on that made me feel very horrible for the way I'd behaved. And so I'm having realizations about that, and in the same time, I'm realizing I should not be in the friend group that I'm in, and I don't want to go back. And when I leave Tulum, I don't want to go back and live there. I need to move out. So that happens in July. I come back from Tulum. I'm at my dad's, at grandpa's for a while, and I think I make the decision pretty quickly, I think, to leave the friend group. It wasn't quick, but once it starts to really take hold, it all happens really fast. And I draft this long message trying to explain how I feel and what's happening. And I don't even completely understand how I feel at the time. It's just that I'm realizing that I cannot keep ignoring my feelings, and that the big feelings that tell me I don't want to be in something, I really need to listen to, or else I am punished. I face consequences. And I was scarred from the consequence I faced from my relationship, that I couldn't do it anymore. And I was having a lot of self-reflection happening, and it was scary what I was seeing when I was looking in the mirror. And so I just realized very quickly I needed to put an end to this friendship so that I could begin to deal with whatever is going on with my brain and my way of being that lets me get into these situations. And so I draft this message and I send it to the entire group. I don't message anybody individually except for one girl who I was friends with separate from this friend group before this friend group. But I message everybody and I send it out, and actually no, I think I go and I get my stuff. I move out in like the middle of the day when when nobody's home. I move all my stuff out. I don't say goodbye. I don't say anything. And then I send the message. And it was the way that it all happened, the way that I ended the friend group, the friendship, the way that I moved out and left and said no goodbyes and had no in-person interaction with anybody was very quintessential, the way I behave when things are ending, because that's what I'm used to. I'm used to just packing up and leaving, and not within this context where I'm ending a friendship, but I'm just used to moving, and moving always being the reason that I'm no longer in a friend group. And so that is what I resorted to. It was the easiest thing for me to do. I did not even physically feel like I could physically be in person and confront the reality of what I was about to do. I didn't have the strength within me. I was very scared and very fearful, and I did not have the bravery to be able to do it in person. So I moved out, and then I sent the message, and then I left the friend group message, group chat, and that was that. And that was the last time I've spoken to any of those girls. The last time I saw them in person was before they ever knew there was a problem. And I have not heard from them since. Yeah, and I ended up having like a conversation with the one woman who I had messaged separately, being like, this isn't meant for you. But that friendship eventually fell apart because I couldn't even maintain that friendship while I was dealing with the fact that I had just ended this huge part of my life, and trying to make sense of what the last 2 or 3 years of my life had even been, what they had meant, what those relationships had meant, what had happened, how did I get myself here. It was a really traumatizing experience, and a very revealing experience. I really got to see the dark sides of all the things that came with me throughout my time growing up that I didn't realize were problems. All of the parts of my behavior that I didn't know even existed. I didn't know were an issue that I was dealing with, that I wasn't paying attention to. And I just felt like I had been so out of control and so not present in my life, and it had resulted in me being a really bad friend, being really emotionally irresponsible, platonically irresponsible with my relationships, and hurting people in the process, and really hurting myself. And I was feeling really guilty and really shameful about the way I navigated life, the way I'd been navigating life for these past few years, just almost, it seems like, asleep at the wheel. And so it was really jarring, and it was very shifting, and that moment, I think, really began the healing work, the shadow work, where I really had to start to look at my life and confront the demons and ask myself questions and separate myself from the reality I had made, and really just take a long, hard look at what was existing right now as life for me and whether I wanted that. And that whole experience and that whole friend group ending, and all of the things that happened, all of that allowed me to kind of change my life, because it completely removed my ambition from university. I couldn't even think. So school began to not matter, and career, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. Everything just became about fixing and healing what was going on, and waking up and looking at myself and taking control of my consciousness, and being conscious, being awake, not just being asleep at the wheel. So friendship has played a major, major, major role in my life, in being the catalyst for change, in my own behavior, and showing me the truth about myself. And that friend group, I am forever grateful for the incredible memories I do have, and the beautiful experience I got to have of having an all Black friend group, which is very special, and something that is hard to have access to, at least for me. And something I really did cherish, and it really meant a lot. And also for the lessons that it taught me. And there's also a lot of grief for the way that I ended it and didn't end it, and the lack of courage I had, and the ways that I was so irresponsible and so emotionally unstable and detached. But as I've gotten older, I've been able to be kinder to myself and remember I was very young and learning lessons, and I did the best I could with what I had. And I did my best not to blame anybody, but instead to take full accountability and full responsibility. And when I got to a point where I thought I could offer more and bring more clarity, I tried to do that with these letters that I ended up sending to them all, though I don't know how helpful that really was and whether that was more so just for me or whatever, but I tried. And I think it's really important that once you have a really impactful relationship and a friendship and like that, you get yourself into a situation you're not supposed to be in, and it ends up leading to a really big tower moment or breakdown in your life where a lot is revealed to you about yourself and your own behavior. It is really important to take that moment and run with it in terms of it being an opportunity to change. There are so many times I feel like where you are presented the chance to change and to actively change, not just to have life change you through the things you go through and through the moments and through all of that, but to actively be a participant in reshaping yourself into what you know you can be and who you really are, because you always have access to your heart, you always have access to the truth. And when life gives you the opportunity to be in control, you should take the wheel. You should take the wheel. Because most of the time we don't get to really be the driving force in our lives. Everything around us is, and the people around us, and the moments, and the environment, and the opportunities, and the government, and all these other things are really the wind beneath our feet and the thing carrying us through. And when we finally get to be the decision maker, when we are finally presented with the opportunity to take the driving wheel, you have to run with those opportunities and take the chance to try and change and develop yourself and grow, because those are the moments that really allow you to shift into whatever alignment is best for you, on your own terms. And those are the moments that determine how long it takes you to get certain places in your life that you want to go. Being passive and being someone who just kind of allows things to happen to you and then allows other things to take responsibility for what happened, and never being the one in control, never being the one responsible, never being the one accountable. There's always something else to blame. There's always someone else to go towards, something else to do. Being the person who can never stop and look at what you've done, look at your life and deal with it. It is the worst way to be, and it hurts you. It really, really hurts you in the long run. And so I think this message today I wanted to share with you guys is just about not being afraid to try and change your life, not being afraid to try and change your life, and not being afraid to be confronted by your own fears and the darkest sides of your own behavior that you didn't know existed, or that you haven't realized how much have hurt other people. It is really hard realizing that you have hurt other people actively, and that, there's not much you're going to be able to do about that beyond working on yourself. I don't know if I will ever be able to gain the forgiveness of those friends for the way that I left, and you know just yeah, the way that I just kind of abandoned that entire situation and ran off. And while I communicated and did what I could, there are things that I didn't do, and those things were impactful. Um, and so, there's nothing I can do about that. I can't go back and change history. I have to just stomach it and do what I can to change my behavior to make sure I don't do that to anybody else. And it's the hardest kind of work because you have to be really self-critical and you have to be really honest. And then it leads you down paths of looking at your entire life, your entire childhood, all your other friendships, all your other relationships, and your parents, and all of these things. And along that path of self-reflecting, you will find a lot of people to blame. You will find all these excuses. But that's not the point of the journey. None of the point of the journey of looking at your childhood and examining that, and looking at the way your parents raised you and your relationships with your siblings. None of it is about finding someone to blame or finding something to blame. All of it is about taking your power back and realizing all the ways you went to sleep, all of the ways that you were conscious and then ignored it, all of the ways that you had feelings presented to you through your body, through your gut, through your heart, and all of the ways you didn't listen, and why. Why didn't you listen? Why were you ignoring yourself? What was more important to you in that moment, and why? What was missing to you that felt like it was more important than hearing the truth? What was more important than the truth in that moment, and why? When you can be honest with yourself and ask yourself these questions and then really honestly search for the answer, and even if you can't get a clear-cut answer, allow that process to be ongoing, allow your ears and your heart to always be open to receiving that and not fighting against it, but then beginning to understand that about yourself, even if you don't know exactly where it comes from, but accepting that about yourself and using that to make more informed decisions in your life and understand the decisions you've made in the past. It's really empowering and it transforms your life. And who I was when I was 21 and going through that experience, I was somebody who was just at the beginning of life, and I didn't have any idea where this path would lead me, and I was scared and excited because I was realizing a whole new world when it came to spirituality, and that was kind of my coping mechanism that got me through all of the loss that was happening at the same time. Kind of allowed me to have a little bit of a blinder on and make it so that I could survive this moment. But I had no idea what this would all lead to. And it's led to such incredible transformation that has been mostly internal. And the way that I have grown and the maturity that I've been able to reach is something that I wouldn't give up for the world, and I would never want to go backwards. But it was very hard to get here, and it was not linear, and I still go back to certain places all the time. But I've gained tools and I've gained wisdom and information about myself, and also just a compassion for myself that is irreplaceable, and I believe is foundational to now this life that I am building for myself that will eventually lead to all of your existence, which I'm so excited for. And I wouldn't have want to do without having done the work that I've had to do over the past few years, and the work that I'm going to be continuing to do so that I can be the best mother for you all, and so that I can set a real example of why there is value in growing, in changing, and taking responsibility for your life and for who you want to become. So this story, yeah, it was kind of all over the place. I hope I was able to round it out. and I hope it made sense. But yeah, I just wanted to share this with you guys. One, because I'm sure you're going to make mistakes in your relationships and in your friendships, and you're going to do things that you feel ashamed of, and you're going to have moments where you're not courageous and where you're just afraid and you just need to run and you just need to escape, and you're just going to be able to do the bare minimum. And I want you to know that that's enough and that that's okay, and that while you should take responsibility and accountability, you also need to hold space for yourself and hold grace for yourself, and remember that nobody's perfect. Nobody is doing everything the correct way all the time. And it doesn't stop you from being able to progress and get to the point of happiness and fulfillment within yourself. I feel very fulfilled in many, many ways. There are many things that I still desire, but I have experienced a lot of fulfillment, and it has come from within, and it has come from the work I've had to do and from looking at myself when I didn't want to, and being honest about my behavior when it was really hard to, and swallowing the truth and allowing that to process when I wanted to throw it up and fight it. So it's okay. It's okay, and I'm just proud of you for every time you take the step to do it and to try and to change and to grow, because it is the most important work you will do. And I think it is the work that matters most because it affects everything else, you know? And if you just care about being a good person and contributing something positive to the world, it starts from within. And it starts from being able to be honest with yourself. And this was one of those moments where I knew the truth for a while, but I had nothing to place it on. And then I had this friend group coming to my life and completely revealed to me all these layers of what's been going on inside this whole time as I've been living and having experiences and taking on things that I didn't realize I was taking on, and patterns, and it was so important and it was so transformative, and I'm so grateful for it. And I'm still sad about the way that it all ended up, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So I wanted to share this with you guys, and I hope it brings something helpful to you. And if you have any questions, then you can just call me. You should be calling me and talking to me every day, because I love you and I'm so happy that you're here, and I can't wait to meet you. But if you're watching this, I've already met you, so yeah, life goes on. And either way, you should be proud of yourself, because it's so hard to be alive. It's the hardest thing ever. This is a crazy existence. It's crazy down here. And I know that I'm bringing you down here to experience this. So don't blame me. I want you to be here. I think it's great here, but it's hard. And I'll never deny that. So if you ever want to talk to me about it, I'll never pretend like it's not hard. It's the hardest thing on the planet. And if I do pretend like it's not hard, just show me this video, because she's lying. She's lying, and maybe she's doing it to protect you, because yeah, it's hard, but you have to get through it anyways. Grandma would do that with me a lot, but still, I know the truth. It's hard. It's so hard. So it's okay. And I'm proud of you either way. Okay? Goodbye.